You guys out there in the audience, tonight we have with us author J. Patrick Lemarr. He goes by Jeff. The J. Patrick Lemarr is the highfalutin way that you can know him and look for him in bookstores and libraries and such. But we're going to call him Jeff this evening because he's a friend. And we're in the book, The Willing, the Wounded, and the Wizard, which we're going to be talking about quite a bit this evening. There is obviously a trinity to these characters in here. So I wanted to ask you, is there a purposeful allegory going on there? And if so, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think there is. I started, all three of those characters kind of started in different places before they sort of coalesced together in one fictional reality. As I started playing around writing fiction early on, I was challenged by a friend because I didn't really read a lot of fantasy, and he was a big fantasy reader, big sci-fi reader, and he would give me books to read that were just never my thing. And that's totally not his fault. It's not a problem with fantasy. It's, I didn't grow up reading fantasy, so I liked a lot of the trappings of fantasy I found, but he was giving me books that were really deep in like D&D lore, like all those series that come out of that where they're like part 18 of something, and I was like, I just am not connecting with these characters in the kind of way that I want to. And so we would talk about it. I was working at a call center at the time, so we had a lot of time to talk in between calls in the slow season. And so, he just one day, just out of the blue, we were talking about what I didn't like about fantasy, and he said, well, what would it look like for you to find a fantasy book that you would like what would that be? And that, of course, every good fiction story and every good fiction author will tell you that all good stories start with that what if, that it's I don't know what would that look like. And before the night was over, I had sketched out several characters and the idea of the kind of story that I want to tell with all the trappings of fantasy. And that's really where Azael came into being. This wizard that is full of himself, who is extremely powerful, yet is not at all responsible with how he uses that power. And so for me, it was he was an interesting character to write because he was kind of the opposite of who I would want to be in those situations. And I knew that when I started writing him, that his story was ultimately going to be kind of redemptive. I didn't really think about that in sort of spiritual terms, but just in the sense of he's going to have to grow up. He's going to have to grow out of this selfishness. And so as I began to sketch out kind of where he was going, that was kind of my first foray into what fantasy would be like for me. And I found that I really loved it. I really did love so much of fantasy. It's just I wasn't reading the stories that I wanted to read. And so that was kind of an experiment that really jump-started me, because it was there I found that I could write something full length. I didn't have to write short fiction. I could really delve into some characters. So I did that. And then the characters Dark and Dylan came from, if we look back in the ancient past, there was this thing called LiveJournal. LiveJournal was just a journaling site. People were all over that place in the days before most social media was going on. And so I was like, I don't know what to do with this space. I don't know what to do. And so I started a fiction story in the form of a diary. And the diary was written by this kid, Dylan, who weird things started happening around him. And he was being left notes by someone who would only sign the note D. And as I began to write these sort of diary entries, I began to figure out for myself that, oh, well, Dark is somehow intimately connected to Dylan. And from there, I just started, I don't want to give too much away, but from there, I started working out all the bits and pieces of how they would fit together. And I honestly couldn't tell you because there are so many stories rattling through my brain all the time. I'm sure you know that feeling, that at somewhere in there, I saw how they could be connected. I figured out why Dark was so different from Dylan, and it had to do with Azael. And once I kind of made that connection, everything kind of clicked into place. And I've been kind of coming back to that well over and over again. So,
And I mean, would you like to talk a little bit about like that library or that room that the characters go to?
it's a massive place that exists in between. The way I think of it, anyway, is it exists between all of our stories, all the stories we know from fiction and from nonfiction. They're all happening everywhere all at once, and in the middle of all of that, or at the center of all of that, is the Evermore. And the Great Library, it just contains all these stories. So before a character like Dylan steps into something like the Christmas Cabin, right? He's going to help this young woman, Samantha. He needs to know what he's in for. And so he may read part of Samantha's story in the library so that he understands where she is and what's about to happen, so that he knows better how to assist her in her path, and in finding, in her case, in finding some joy where it's sorely lacking. But yeah, the Great Library is sort of a recurring setting. We get to meet some of the, or we get to see kind of how they traverse into the stories that they visit through the Great Library. The way I describe it, it's kind of, I guess you call it a portal system. The library can instruct them where they need to go, and they can just open a door and be there. It's always a door. I've got some fun places where I play with that a little bit, where they go through a door and they end up crawling out a cabinet somewhere or something. But yeah, it's that sort of thing. And there are places where we explore the Great Library a little bit more. So that's something I'll keep coming back to as well.
Let me switch gears a little bit, and let's talk a bit about your writing process. Let's share with the audience some of what helps Jeff sit down to write and be the author that you are. You mentioned that it took a couple years for you to get into that writing groove when you were a stay-at-home dad.
Yeah.
So what does your writing process look like today?
I try to at least get in a couple of hours of uninterrupted writing time every day.
Okay.
That doesn't always work,
Nice.
but I try.
Okay.
Thankfully, I have a coffee shop down the road from me that is nice and quiet. They know me by name. They have my coffee on the screen and ready to go for me when I walk in. And
Oh my gosh.
yeah, it's really nice. And they're actually, you'll appreciate this. I've been here longer than that coffee shop has been here in our community, but they're called Hope Coffee Company. And so I go and sit at Hope for 2 hours every day and have a latte and, try to tune in to what I'm working on at the moment, whether it's editing or whether it's writing. And yeah, and then that's my time. Now, it doesn't mean I don't write other places. It doesn't mean I don't try to work at home, but at home, there's always somebody pulling at me, always somebody needing something. And I don't want to tune them out for the sake of a story. They come first. So it's usually that solid 2 hours at the coffee shop. That's where I do the most work.
Okay.
Shout out to Hope Coffee Company. They've been very kind. They never mind me kind of stalking out a corner and I've got a lot of stuff that I travel with, my laptop and all the things. So I've got a lot with me, and I just kind of take a table and let loose. But they've been very helpful. Last year at Christmas time, they actually gave away paperback copies of the Christmas Cabin as their gift for people who bought gift certificates for their coffee shop. So they've supported me that way. They had my the gift edition of that book, the hardcover, on their shelves as well to sell during the season.
Switch over to some marketing thoughts for a minute here, because you just mentioned that Hope Coffee Shop, stocking your book, having the Christmas Cabin, on the shelves. And I love that. I think that's awesome. My first publisher, Bob Jelinas at Archibooks Publishing, he spoke about, working with like local shops or a local restaurant or local stores that you could like work into your narrative maybe, or have a character visit that store, and then that store would want to have your book on their shelves or at their counter, after it's published. What a great marketing idea. So tell me how it came about. How did it did you just suggest it to them? Did they suggest that to you? How did that happen?
Well, they had been very supportive. They bought the coffee shop from some friends of mine,
Okay.
and it was always kind of my go-to coffee spot. But when it changed hands, I wasn't sure if it would continue to be, if they would want me taking up a room in the corner. But they were super sweet family, and they were like, "Hey, we know they've done stuff with you before. We want to keep that relationship going with you." And then the Christmas cabin it's an interesting thing marketing wise because it's seasonal, right? Every Christmas I can come back to the Christmas cabin until I write a follow up. Anyway, I can come back to that and kind of point people to it. So last Christmas, I think, just a month or two before, I mentioned to them, I want to keep you guys in business because this is my office away from home. And I want to help and support you the way that you help and support me. So here's an idea. And so I just tossed the idea their way. And it was really sweet because after the season was over, when I picked up the remaining books that were still on the shelf, and they were paying me for because I let them buy the paperbacks at cost. That's what they gave away to people that bought the gift cards. I was just picking up readers there. I wasn't making money off of that transaction. They also were carrying the hardcover, and I had wrapped some of the hardcovers in Christmas wrap so that they were ready, put little tags on them that could be filled out. Like I'd done all that, and they sold a few of those and a few unwrapped hardcovers as well. And so they were paying me for all that, and they said, people could buy the gift card and get a copy for free. I hate that the hardcover was the same price as the gift card because then people just felt like they'd rather buy the gift card and get it for free, and that probably cost you some sales, which was a very sweet thought, and I appreciate that. But I said, I'm just trying to help you stay in business so that I have a place to go. It's very selfish of me, and I'm picking up readers every time somebody buys a gift card and gets a book. That's all I wanted out of that. And the fact that I sold a few hardcovers is just gravy. So I appreciate the thought, but like I want to support you because you already support me by giving me a place to work every day. And I feel like, especially in my situation, because I'm in a small community, I know I can know people. I can be invested. And I feel like before I can ask them to invest in what I'm doing as a writer, I need to be out there investing in what they're doing as well. So I try to shop local. I try to support local businesses and do that where I can because I want that support when I've got a new book coming out or, when I'm trying something new. So I think it goes both ways, and it's good to have those relationships and those connections for sure.
You're re-releasing material with some added bonus to it or some extra thing to it. And you're putting just a new marketing spin on getting material back out in front of the audience again. Would you recommend this to other authors? Is this something that you're finding to be beneficial? Is it just taking a lot of time? How are you looking at it overall?
I think it depends on where you are in your journey. So when All That Waits in the Night came out, I didn't know about ARC readers. I didn't know about how to prep a book before it comes out. In my mind, especially in the early days, now I was starting to learn more then, but I still didn't really have, I'm a one-man show, right? So it's how do I do the things that I want to do? And sometimes it takes longer to get certain things off the ground. For me, All That Waits in the Night, it was just about, when you're an indie writer, let's go back to the logistics side of this. When you're an indie author, we're not the Stephen Kings of the world. So we don't get the big marketing push right out of the gate. And we don't get a team of people blitzing social media with images that they pay big money to have made and whatever. We're on the hook for everything we do, right? Time-wise, money-wise, whatever. And even if you're published by a small imprint or something, you're still having to do a lot of heavy lifting yourself, get your book seen. So I wasn't in a place to really draw a lot of attention to All That Waits in the Night when the paperback came out. And maybe I'm still not. We have yet to see. But I wanted to give it another shot to reach people. and a hardcover, like I said, was something I'd wanted to do initially anyway. But I think because on the indie side of things, we don't get that initial push. We don't have the big multi-billion-dollar companies behind us doing those things. We have to look at sales as a long-term thing. We're a long tail plan, right? So we're keeping these things in front of people. We're refreshing them on things. So yeah, maybe we're writing this new thing, but I'm still offering, All That Waits in the Night. I'm still offering The Christmas Cabin. I'm still offering these stories, and right now I'm refreshing the fantasy series. Because I've written that third book and I want to give people a new chance to discover it. So I feel like we kind of have to have that mindset that over time, maybe we made a significant splash when that book first came out, but maybe there's a whole crew of new readers that if we were to reintroduce it to them, whether it's with a new cover or an extra story or whatever we want to do, that maybe we can connect with a few more the next time around.
You had mentioned to me that you have a little marketing idea that you're going to be doing at Imaginarium. You're going to be carrying around a suitcase at Imaginarium.
Yeah.
What can people get from the suitcase?
Little top secret attaché case.
Yeah.
So in that suitcase, so I'm trying to do things whenever I do a live event, whether I'm there vending or I'm there as a guest, or just on a panel or whatever I'm doing. Try to make sure that I have some things that can only be had in person. So The Willing, the Wounded, and the Wizard is a digital release only, except when you find me at an event. And when you find me at an event, you can get the paperback, which Sandy has. So this will be one of the things in my case at Imaginarium. You have to say the secret password. So if you're watching now, your secret password is SandySaysRead, so that I know that you watch this. And you can ask me for one of these, and I think they'll be like $4, like not a big deal. And then I mentioned that in September, I've got that horror short story, The Figure, coming out. It is a digital only release unless you see me in person, but it's not out until September, except that I have some paperback copies for Imaginarium, and they actually say that they're exclusive to Imaginarium 2024 on the inside. So anybody that wants one, you just gotta attach me with my case and ask me about that. I think those will be $4 as well. But that's all I'll have with me, those things. And then I've got a few stickers too, which are fun. I always like stickers. I've got this one that says, I went to Imaginarium 2024 and met J. Patrick Lemarr. Yay? With a question mark.
Nice. That's great.
But I met this guy, whatever, So I've got that, and I've got a few things for The Figure as well.
Nice.
So yeah, I'll have those things with me as well. And those are free. So just ask me for one if you spot me somewhere.
That is cool. I like it. Well, tell us where we can stalk you online. For folks who can't make it to Imaginarium next week, where can they find you online?
Sure. The best place is my website, which is just jpatricklemarr.com. I do the occasional blog article there. I've got a running series called 7 Questions where I do brief interviews with other authors. Sandy's been kind enough to let me interview her and quite a few other authors that have already done that with me, and I've got some more coming up, so that's always fun. I'm all over social media. You can find me on X, on Facebook, on Instagram. I don't do much on Instagram, but I am there. So yeah, those are the best places to find me. But the website's usually, all those links are there. And if you want to know what I'm up to or what I've got coming out next, the website's definitely the best place to check that out.